Hey everyone, Umby here, and I wanted to go over something that has we've been going through for quite some time here. I joined a VGC Draft League. The format is for a Series 9 Sword and Shield, and I did well enough to make second seed. There were 8 groups in total. I made second seed in my group, and out of 12 players, 12 players per group, so like 96 people. I made second seed in my group, and we are moving into a playoff stage, currently in top 32. And I wanted to take a moment to go over what we're doing here and how I'm prepping for some matches that are coming up over the next few weeks. So essentially, if you never heard of or played in a draft league, just essentially think of any like kind of fantasy draft where players in a group will take turns selecting Pokemon from the entire available pool for that format. There are certain restrictions and budgets that go into effect, so you're trying to make the best possible combination of Pokemon within those restrictions. For us, we had to have 11 Pokemon, and each of these Pokemon fall within a specific kind of tier. And that's if you see anything looks like kind of weird or a low tier, that's all that factors into it. You see Deflection Deer over here being a pre-evolved Pokemon. That's all it is. There are budget restrictions. I'll leave a link to a document I typed up a few weeks ago that kind of goes into better detail on what those restrictions are. But this is the lineup that I chose. Each week, you're not like locked into using the same Pokemon each week or the same moves. You can adjust as you go along. Like, this is all visible to my opponents and vice versa. So you can kind of cater these towards different matchups, which is what makes this so cool. Trying to analyze the opponent's lineup and see what you can do to counter it and then still run your own game plan. And even the draft itself, has some strategy that you can kind of gear towards. So I just found that really interesting. Wanted to join, see one of my buddies playing in a couple of them. Decided to give my hand, and so far I'm doing pretty solid. But yeah, as far as like the strategy of the Pokemon go, let's get right into it. Now, each team has to have a G-Max Pokemon, one per team. I chose G-Max Grimmsnarl. Also, just for reference, this is in the order that I selected all these Pokemon, are just in order of like tier from almost highest to lowest. Don't worry about it too much. But G-Max Grimmsnarl. So basically, if I chose normal Grimmsnarl, it's a tier 1 Pokemon from the list that was provided to us. So it has like the highest cost, which means I wouldn't have been able to get picks like Thundurus and Urshifu on the same team. But I really wanted Grimmsnarl because its utility is outstanding in this kind of draft league situation. I think no matter what matchup you run into, it always has something for it. Whether it's a defensive utility from Reflected Light Screen via Prankster, or whether it's more of like an offensive utility like Fake Tears, or something like really tricky like Speed Control through Scary Face, or Trick Eject Button, Trick Iron Ball, Trick Lagging Tail, all sorts of messiness. And I think the flexibility of that alone is really valuable when it comes to like I said, catering your team each week for the different matchups. So the fact that I could select it as a G-Max, I think is really valuable. Most people think of G-Max and they think of it as a slot where you need your offensive Pokemon. So, G-Max Rillaboom went quickly, G-Max Cinderace, Charizard, Blastoise, all went pretty quickly. I decided I'd value the offense through my other pieces instead, and then just use this so that I have a Grimmsnarl even if I don't use the G-Max function for it, right? So far, I believe I've brought it to every single matchup. There may have been one, I have to go back and check, but yeah, I've pretty much brought it like almost every time, right? Similar thing is going on for Thundurus, right? It's powerful, it's flexible. I've brought it to, I know I haven't brought it to every matchup, but almost every matchup. Key thing here is it can run either Prankster or Defiant, which somewhat creates a bit of a mini mix-up because the opponent may not know what to expect. However, By virtue of Grimmsnarl being a prankster that I bring a lot, typically you won't see the prankster Thundurus come out. It's mostly just Defiant. So kind of the value towards that. A lot of people want to make sure they have an Intimidator on their team, because there's only going to be one Incineroar that goes around. So they're just scrambling to find the Gyarados, the Arcanine, the Landorus guy. And this allows me to just position in front of them and say, hey, if you want to bring this Pokemon, you're going to have to deal with my Thundurus. And that alleviates some pressure for the rest of my team, namely Urshifu. So my initial strategy was just to grab Thundurus, Urshifu, and Nihilego. Collectively, they combined to make the quote-unquote Nut Core that was popular during Series 9 at that point. Essentially, you would just sit the Urshifu next to Thundurus, which is both are really powerful physical threats. But if Intimidate was brought along to kind of slow the Urshifu down, you can't really guard against because of Unseen Fist, then you just make Thundurus more powerful. And with Thundurus being one of the faster max airstreamers in the game, you get to get a free speed boost for the Urshifu, who still kind of goes to town through Unseen Fist. It's really hard to defend against, and I found value in that. So fairly early picks on for me were Thundurus and the Urshifu single strike. Right. Nihilego is meant to cover certain matchups that may not be solved immediately by those two. So, for example, opposing like Zapdoses is meant to deal with more efficiently, because the Thundurus is so focused on max airstreaming that the Urshifu just kind of gets mopped by the enemy Zapdoses max airstream on the other end. So Nihilego comes in to take the max airstream and can fire off super effective stab attacks into Zapdos, things of that nature. So cohesively, they make a really cool core. I just want that I thought would have some high value and want to incorporate into my team. But on top of that, Nihilego's not like a bad special offensive unit in this series. So now it's starting to kind of balance out the damage like immediately with a combination of Thundurus and Nihilego, with Thundurus being mainly a physical threat. I'm already starting to balance out the team a little bit. Rotom Heat, I know I definitely want to have a Grass, Water, Fire core. My initial choices were, I knew I definitely wanted Rotom Heat on the squad. I think even with Thundurus being an electric type on the team, Rotom Heat provides an extra bit of insulation versus like opposing electric types that Thundurus doesn't. They do share a rock weakness, but Rotom at least provides an ice weakness, which I think is kind of crucial because I'm not really doing that anywhere else outside of Registeel, who is not necessarily firing a super effective move into whatever's using the ice move. Don't worry about that, but I think Rotom Heat has like high defensive value when combined with the rest of the team, particularly the rest of my Grass, Water, Fire core. I really like Serena. It's like actually one of my favorite Pokemon at this time. But with everyone focusing so heavily on getting a Rillaboom, and there are two people that have it, because you can have both. You can have one of the regular version or the G-Max version. They count as two separate units, so there are two teams that will have it. And Serena shuts both of them down. In addition, they sub the grassy terrain to where Serena could potentially use a grassy glide of its own. One of the things of why it's kind of looked at after things like Rillaboom or Kartana is because it's not quite as defensively solid or as fast as the other two. But versus the Rillaboom, getting a grassy glide of its own that the opponent is setting up for you is like a really good opportunity to take advantage of, while stopping the opposing grassy glides with Queenly Majesty. Speaking of Queenly Majesty, Prankster also has high value in these types of formats. Like, same way that I picked up Grimmsnarl, everyone else is scrambling to pick up Klefki, Meowstic, just to get some type of priority utility into their game plan. Even going so far as one team picked up Morgrim, because you can still use pre-evolved Pokemon. It's just that valuable, and Serena gets to stop that as well. So I think all that makes it like a really cool defensive unit, but it's no slouch on offense either, with a base 120 attack, and it actually has some pretty good coverage. Like, I'm really a fan of it having triple axle to do amazing damage into both grass and flying types, which is normally weak to. It's to the point where I could even use that next to the Thunderous, get the airstream boost, and I'm still creating like a ton of pressure with all the offensive prowess just from those two Pokemon. There was even a match with a Kingdra where I just opted to go for play rough so I could get max Starfall and address it more cleanly. Like, it's some outside of the box things that we can do with this Pokemon, all packaged into one. I will admit sometimes it's tricky to really position because its stats are in a really weird place, but overall it's been kind of an MVP in a lot of my games. Now Swampert, there was a situation where I essentially had Gastrodon on the team for the sake of optimizing my budget, because Swampert was like a lower tier Pokemon and thus cost less. I opted to trade the Gastrodon for something else, just keep Swampert as my bulky water type, which I think is really solid overall. We get to resist the rock types that otherwise threaten the Rotom Heat, get to resist the steel types, and hit super effective into the ground types that would threaten the Neolego. So I think all these Pokemon combined, like Rotom Heat, Serena, and Swampert, I think is a really solid Grass, Water, Fire core. They can either slow down the pace of the game, or even launch their own offensive. Like, all three can be Dynamax targets in the clutch, I believe. All right, Fletchinder is kind of a fortunate / unfortunate pick. Talonflame is actually one of my other favorite Pokemon, and one that I was eyeing to sit next to Serena. I really do like that combination. And it may have ended up being my fire type over Rotom Heat, both of them were the same tier and cost the same. Right? That kind of left me short-handed, however, because Talonflame's not really the defensive fire type pick that I would have wanted. So that's why I ended up going with Rotom Heat overall. However, I still kind of wanted a priority Tailwind just in case. And I was allowed to pick up Fletchinder. Even though it's a pre-evolved Pokemon, it still gets access to Gale Wings. So I can still combine it with Serena for some really cool utility. The Queenly Majesty prevents Fake Out from destroying the Gale Wings, so I still get my own priority. I think it's really cool. And it wasn't really used much, but I expect that it'll have very niche scenarios where I want to bring it over something like Neolego or even Urshifu. Urshifu we already went over, but again, really strong pick. There are essentially 4 Urshifus. The Single Strike, the Rapid Strike, and then the G-Max version of both of them. So I think it was really crucial to get the Single Strike one early on. I think it's generically the stronger of the two, just because Wicked Blow can hit into more targets without being often resisted. And Unseen Fist is just a crazy ability. Like I mentioned, putting it next to Dynamax Thunderous, firing off max airstreams that can't really be guarded outside of max guard, and then just following that up with a Wicked Blow from a now speed boosted Urshifu makes it really, really difficult to defend against if you don't have the defensive type coverage on your team. I can also do really cool things like run Scarf on it, and if I'm not too concerned about the type of damage I'm taking, I can get greedy, run Assault Vest Thunderous, and then coaching with Choice Scarf Urshifu, and now this this bulky, defensively and special defensively sound Pokemon that's just getting stronger and stronger each turn. I think it's got a lot of flexibility on my team. I haven't used it often, even though I've brought it to a number of matches. It conflicts a little bit with Grimmsnarl as the primary dark type that I want to bring next to Thundurus, and a little bit with Serena as the secondary physical threat. But I think it was still important to pick up this Pokemon, at least so no one else has it. and it can still just generically find use, again, in niche scenarios. All right, Registeel. Initially, I did not have this Pokemon, but as I got further into the draft later in the turns, I understood that, Registeel is actually a messed up Pokemon that can steal late games. And as a matter of fact, I've stolen some late games with Registeel on my own. With a combination of Clear Body and Iron Defense and Body Press, it is hard to stop this Pokemon if all of your resources have already been spent, or if you don't have the appropriate counter for it. Like say Will-O-Wisp, Taunt Spectrier, for example. So I wanted to make sure that, again, that nobody else had it. Even if I never ended up using it, I want to make sure I had it. But I was lacking some ice resistance on the team, Rotom being the sole one. And despite the fact that I have 2 Pokemon that were already ice weak, I wanted to have at least a little bit of insulation if I ever ran into a matchup like Glastrier, for example. I just didn't want to get completely caught with my pants down. Right. Now Raikou and Togetic are actually some late season trades. They were traded at the very end. I initially had Graplocked, just a low tier pick. Wasn't planning on using it at all. It was meant to be the counter to Registeel if I didn't get it, because just use Topsy Turvy on any Iron Defense strategies. I might have been able to use it in playoffs. Didn't really think that far ahead, because other Registeels could be in play, and it's still also useful into something like Ferrothorn if it's gotten its Iron Defenses up, right? But overall, it just didn't have like a lot of utility. And I wanted to make sure going into the postseason that every single Pokemon I would believe had value in case I run into like a weird matchup. And Raikou, even though I have 2 electric types on the team, the weaknesses between them are not particularly shared. Outside like Thundurus and Rotom being rock weak, we now have 2 Pokemon that are immune to ground. Raikou's weak to it, but 2 Pokemon are immune to it. You have the Rotom with the ice resistance to protect the Thundurus, and both Rotom and Raikou were Thundurus takes the electric neutral, both of them resist it. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have all 3 electric types on the team, as they will fulfill different roles in different defensive scenarios. I like Raikou as like a really fast snarler. Or if there's a matchup where I just don't think Grimmsnarl will get a chance to shine, I can also opt to use Raikou as a fast screen setter. Probably some weird scenarios where I might do like Bulldoze, Registeel. We're not going to get into all the weird stuff, but I don't think it's that bad for what the cost was as a lower tier Pokemon. And then Togetic, I didn't have a redirector at this point. So someone had just traded it, just dropped it from their team at the end of the season. So I wanted to pick it up, just for the general utility of having a redirector. As we look into the off season, there are going to be a number of number of players that have Urshifu on their team that I think it might be crucial for it to play into. So we'll see. But that's just my general approach to how I drafted, the value that I see in each of these Pokemon. Again, I have a link in the description that kind of goes into the details of further details of my thoughts and even replays from this season, so you can see how I operated with the team. But we're gonna move into the playoff stage, and I'm gonna do, hopefully I don't get knocked out first round, but for each of the matches that I play, I'm also gonna do a video live while I'm playing the battle, so you can kind of see my thoughts in real time. And I'll see if I can also throw in, my prep time into those videos as well. Either way, if you like this kind of content from me, I know I don't put out a lot, even if it's for Pokemon, definitely leave a like and a comment down below. I would definitely appreciate it, but I will see you in the next video. Thanks, everyone.